Good morning, this is Will Faber from Art to Ride, and today we're here to work on a little bit of Canter. This is Amber and her horse Legolas. So before you can ask the horse to canter on the lunge line, you've got to be sure that he's working in the trot over his back, which this horse is pretty nicely. Now you'll notice that we do have the line over the top of this horse's head. He's a young horse and he can be, before Amber bought him a little while back, he had become quite fractious on the lunge line and had learned to yank off and drag people out of the arena and that sort of thing. So that's why we have the line over the top connected to the bit with this horse. So if he does get fractious, we can control that very quickly without a lot of difficulty. So he's very nicely swinging over his back. There could be a little more active. It's getting moving a little more actively. So the point is, when is the horse ready to canter? Well, he's ready to begin trying to canter when you can get him over his back in the trot. That doesn't mean he's going to necessarily work over his back in the canter. And that's the important thing. You know, just to do a lot of cantering with the horse hollow isn't going to do any good. In fact, it's going to make the horse unsound usually, or sore in the back or something like that. So once we can get him swinging, then we only want to canter for very short periods. So I'm going to ask Amber to ask him to canter now. She's ready there. And we'll see how he does. He's just beginning this. And you can see how he kind of threw his shoulder into the inside, threw his head up a little bit. But that's not bad. It's a pretty small circle, but he broke on her there a little bit. So I'm going to ask her to put him back in the canter. Now we must be sure that whenever horses do things, that is our idea, not theirs. So if the horse does break on you for one reason or another, you must put him right back in the canter again. So please do so. Put him right back in the canter. And if he breaks again, send him right back on. Don't let him just drop down whenever he feels like it. Move him away from you. And on the lunge line, you can see, as I say, this horse gets a little fractious on the lunge line. He starts looking to want to play a little bit. So she'll come back to the trot again, stretch him all the way down again. Once again, we want to do short periods of canter, not long periods. I can move on a little more actively. You may need to tap him with the whip a little bit. There we go. So he gets a little more active. He's a little distracted by a horse coming up the lane there. A little more active in the trot, being sure that he's stretching all the way into the contact. So we must have one thing before we try the next. So we get the trot correct. And then again, ask him to canter. And this time I want you to be sure and keep him in the canter. Don't let him break until I ask you to bring him back down again. So if he tries to break on you, send him right away forward again. That's a bad habit that we don't want to have beginning with him. Good. So keep him in the canter. And this is a pretty good canter. He threw his head up a little bit, but he's still cantering over his back pretty well. It's a little short. He wants to throw his shoulder to the outside a little bit, so try to move him out there a little bit, keep him in the canter. Remember, just with all kinds of lunging, the first thing we have to insist on is that the horse will move out away from us. Otherwise, we really can't get anything correct going on. And now ask him back to a trot. Now that was a little better that time. He stabilized a little better. We saw a little improvement. Now come back and improve the trot again. So being sure that each time as we go up and down through the gears, that we be sure that each step is correct along the way, that we don't just bring him back and let him fall apart in the trot, that we always come back and reestablish that swinging active trot again. A little more forward. He's trying to slow down on you a little too much. Probably to the point where he may need to tap. You know, once in a while they need to feel the whip. You know, they quickly learn that if you're snapping, that it doesn't mean anything if you don't touch him with it every now and then. He's being a little lazy on there. You can see how he gets a little bit fractious like that when she tries to send him forward. So reestablish your trot again, get him swinging and active one more time. So being sure that each stage is correct before we go to the next stage. And understanding that short periods of canter, especially on the lunge line, are what we want to do. Not canter till the horse falls apart. So once again, once you get him back swinging in the trot again, I want you to ask for that canter one more time. And again, canter. Not a bad transition. A little bit of a head toss, but I wouldn't expect him to do much more than that. As long as he stays out there, ask him right back in the canter. He's being lazy with you again. So you might need to feel a little tap of that whip and push him out on the circle, make him move a little more actively. Like that. That's better. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Don't let him break. Now make a transition back to trot. And then improve the trot, get the trot correct again. So we see why that wasn't a perfect canter. You could see how he was wanting to throw himself in towards her a little bit. We've just started to begin doing much asking for canter on the lunge line with this horse. So you can see how he tried to throw his shoulder in her, at her. He threw his head rather up in the air. And while he didn't completely hollow, he didn't completely continue to canter over his back as well, which is what we would like to see. So I'm going to ask her to canter him one more time. There, as he comes around there, ask again for the canter. Good. Now we had a little improvement in the takeoff that time. He didn't throw his head quite so much. A little better. He's staying out a little better, though he's still trying to break on her a little bit. That's better there. And he's actually starting to stretch into the contact a little bit. Because remember, we want the horse to stretch in all three gaits ultimately. Now that's a little better canter there. There. Now he's moving away from her. Now asking back to the trot. So you can see how in that last little bit of canter he stabilized in the rein and wasn't so high-headed, reestablished the big swinging trot. And that's what you want to look for. So the rules then are, be sure that you have the trot first before you start trying the canter, and then just canter for short periods of time, looking for the horse to stabilize in the bridle or stretch into the contact and not throw his head straight up in the air. So what we saw with this horse for him today, that was a good improvement. Once again, this is Will Faber from Art to Ride with Amber Matusik and Legolas today.